The girl is running to her best friend's house to return a book when, unexpectedly, Seon-hee sees Soo-yeon entering her best friend's home. Just as Seon-hee is about to turn back, she suddenly hears a piercing scream. Rushing into the house to check, Seon-hee is shocked to see Soo-yeon holding a knife, along with a scar on her head that is starting to become visible. Soo-yeon is terrified at the sight of Seon-hee, as she had clearly promised not to come here. Losing control, Soo-yeon angrily points the knife at Seon-hee, lamenting that her life has been ruined because of Seon-hee. As she lunges forward to attempt to kill Seon-hee, her male friend bravely takes the blow for her. Blood begins to spread, soaking through his shirt as he slowly collapses onto the cold floor, reaching out towards Seon-hee. Originally, he had planned to confess his feelings to her today, but now everything has come to an end. Later that night, Seon-hee, covered in blood, takes slow steps back home. Her mother is happily preparing dinner when she suddenly senses her daughter's trembling voice. As she steps outside to check, she is left speechless when she sees Seon-hee drenched in blood. Seon-hee, terrified, tells her mother that she has seen someone die. Witnessing her daughter crying and kneeling on the ground, her mother quickly rushes to embrace her, understanding more than anyone else that her daughter could never commit such acts. Everything began the previous month when Seon-hee cheerfully went to school, excited to meet Dong-ga-ho, who was her closest friend. Dang-ga-ho obediently followed her lead, while another friend, Song-woo, playfully teased Dong-ga-ho, causing him to become angry. The three of them had been good friends since childhood. During class activity time before lessons, the teacher introduced a new student to the class, sparking curiosity among the classmates. The new girl introduced herself as Soo-yeon. When she unexpectedly approached Seon-hee's desk to greet her, Seon-hee did not recognize her, which disappointed. Seon-hee, an orphan, was adopted by a wealthy family. Her father is a famous lawyer, a figure voted one of the most influential people of the year. The three of them are always present at award ceremonies. Seon-hee grew up in a very nurturing environment, and despite being accustomed to the limelight, she is very friendly with others, attracting the affection of many boys. Every day, Seon-hee receives numerous confessions of love, which annoys Dong-ga-ho, who harbors feelings for her. Not only him, but Song-woo is also secretly in love with her. Observing Seon-hee live a happy life makes Soo-yeon feel envious. She approaches Seon-hee's desk, gently pulls a pencil from her hair, and places a box of matches in front of her. Seon-hee recalls their childhood memories. She recalled how Soo-yeon had protected her from bullies at the orphanage. Coldly striking a match, Soo-yeon had claimed she was the one who set the house on fire. Each time she spoke up, she confronted the bullies, who feared her demonic transformation, the one who burned everything to ashes. The fire grew larger, scaring the bullies away. Soo-yeon had laughed loudly, pleased to have outsmarted them. From then on, the two girls became inseparable. Soo-yeon would often use a pencil to tie up Seon-hee's hair and was the one who taught her how to light a fire. However, their friendship abruptly ended when Soo-yeon was adopted. Before saying goodbye to Soo-yeon, Soo-yeon gave Seon-hee her box of matches. After that moment, they lost contact. Seon-hee is astounded to find herself reunited with Soo-yeon after all these years, yet she no longer feels close to her, surprised to learn that her friend was never adopted, all because of a single accident. Seon-hee holds Soo-yeon's hand, offering comfort. Soo-yeon notices the gift that Seon-hee received earlier that day and asks her to give it back. That evening, Seon-hee returns home feeling dejected, unsure how to navigate her relationship with her former friend. Thus, she decides to seek advice from her father. Although busy, her father makes time for a heartfelt conversation. Seon-hee shares that she has a childhood friend, but upon reuniting, she feels distanced from her. Her father understands her emotions, reassuring her not to force herself to like someone. Things will fall into place over time. At the same time, Soo-yeon heads to her part-time job, perplexed by the sudden closure of the establishment. Staff members rush over to inform her that the owner has fled, leaving Soo-yeon in shock as he was holding 2 months of her wages. Soo-yeon's hard work was all in vain, contrasting sharply with Seon-hee, who was driven to school every day in luxury cars by her parents. Lacking the funds to support her life, Soo-yeon bravely approached Seon-hee to borrow money. However, Seon-hee, immersed in her headphones, was oblivious to what Soo-yeon was saying. This oversight infuriated Soo-yeon, who felt disrespected. Seon-hee was taken aback by Soo-yeon's reaction, as the entire class cast disapproving glances in her direction. The incident was witnessed by Kyung-ho, who became enraged at the thought of someone bullying Seon-hee. The events from that morning left Soo-yeon feeling humiliated, prompting her to consider dropping out to find work, although she faced resistance. Initially, it was Soo-yeon who insisted on attending school, but once she realized that Seon-hee had forgotten about her, she felt betrayed. What she had anticipated to be a pleasant day took a turn for the worse right from the morning, when Kyung-ho contemptuously tossed a wad of cash in front of her, warning her not to disturb Seon-hee again. This action struck at Soo-yeon's sense of pride, leading her to believe that Seon-hee had leaked information about her to others. Once Kyung-ho turned away, anger overwhelmed Soo-yeon, and she confronted him physically, hurling the money back at him. Frustrated, she approached Seon-hee and questioned, "Do you see me as a beggar?" The incident of Soo-yeon attacking another student quickly spread throughout the school, drawing the attention of bullies who expressed interest in including her in their group. However, Soo-yeon detested individuals like them, promptly rejecting their invitation and warning them to keep their distance. The following following day, Kyung-ho arranged to meet Soo-yeon in order to set things straight. He lowered his head and apologized to her for misunderstanding. Soo-yeon was taken aback by his apology, and his demeanor caused an emotional stir within her. Upon returning to class, Son-hee was waiting to apologize as well, inviting Soo-yeon to join her for lunch. When Soo-yeon inquired if Son-hee had persuaded Kyung-ho to apologize, Son-hee's admission left Soo-yeon feeling disappointed. To create a rift between the two, Soo-yeon sought out Sung-woo, who also had feelings for Son-hee but lacked the courage to express them. Given the disparity in their social statuses, Sung-woo often kept to himself. Soo-yeon encouraged him to confess his feelings and left him in a state of confusion. That evening, Soo-yeon awaited Son-hee outside the community center, wanting to speak privately with her. Curious, Son-hee followed Soo-yeon down a secluded path. Once they reached the end of the road, Soo-yeon mustered the courage to recount the tragedy of the past. Son-hee was stunned to see Soo-yeon's scarred face, as the fire incident had permanently altered Soo-yeon's life. The blaze had disfigured her, leading to her being overlooked for adoption. Soo-yeon revealed that Son-hee had played a role in this outcome. The night before Soo-yeon was adopted, Son-hee had been playing with the box of matches Soo-yeon gave her, leading to a devastating fire that consumed the orphanage. The children were evacuated swiftly, except for Soo-yeon, who was trapped because she was in a different room, suffering severe injuries. Meanwhile, Son-hee, the one who caused the tragedy, was adopted by a wealthy family, while Soo-yeon had to live with permanent burn scars on her head. The severe burns had irreparably marred her future. Soo-yeon walked step by step towards Son-hee, and although she was fortunate to survive the fire, the large scar had changed Soo-yeon's life. She felt insecure every time she had to wear a wig. Even though she despised the wig, she could only embrace it and burst into tears. Deep within Soo-yeon's heart, she had placed all the blame on Son-hee, who never suspected that the gift she had given would cause such a catastrophe. Son-hee cried and apologized to Soo-yeon, and now that they had met again, Soo-yeon threatened that she would gradually demand repayment of this debt. That night, Son-hee couldn't sleep, haunted by the words of Soo-yeon. She felt guilty towards her childhood friend. The next morning, when Soo-yeon arrived at school, she unexpectedly discovered a secret letter addressed to her, written by none other than Son-hee. In it, Son-hee expressed her desire to apologize to Soo-yeon for what had happened. Until this point, Son-hee had never considered that an accident could befall her friend. Although it may have seemed too late, Son-hee expressed her wish to rekindle their past friendship. Just then, a group of bullies appeared, curious about the incident between Soo-yeon and Son-hee. They discovered the secret that Soo-yeon had always kept hidden, and they laughed and threatened to deal with Son-hee. Provoked and unable to bear the assault on her dignity, Soo-yeon retaliated against them, warning that they should not come near Son-hee from then on. As the last class of the day concluded, the two friends faced each other shyly. Soo-yeon thanked her friend for the letter, and this simple gratitude relieved Son-hee. On the way home, Soo-yeon was cornered by a gang of thugs, who were the older brothers of the two bullies. Seeking revenge for their juniors, they dragged Soo-yeon into a corner and forced her to kneel. One by one, they approached, beating and humiliating her. Just then, Kyung-ho appeared in the nick of time, furious as he struck the ringleader. The gang members were terrified that someone dared to challenge their boss. Kyung-ho stepped forward to check on Soo-yeon's injuries, and upon finding her unharmed, he let out a sigh of relief. As he reached out his hand towards Soo-yeon, the ringleader pulled out a weapon to threaten him. However, Kyung-ho merely smiled dismissively at them and lunged forward, sending two thugs flying. The girls watching were frightened as someone came to rescue Soo-yeon, and since Kyung-ho had a policy against hitting girls, he allowed Soo-yeon to decide for herself. After letting the bullies flee, the police finally arrived. Kyung-ho, not wanting to get involved in the trouble, took Soo-yeon's hand and ran away. Soo-yeon's heart raced once more as she smiled, chasing after the call of love. He escorted her all the way home, and as she said goodbye to her savior, Soo-yeon secretly watched him leave, recalling the gift Kyung-ho had given to Son-hee, a surge of jealousy causing discomfort in her heart. A new day began, and when she arrived in class, Kyung-ho was taking pictures with Son-hee, the trio of close friends always together. Wanting to help them, Soo-yeon suggested Son-hee join in the photo. Unexpectedly, she wanted to take a photo with Kyung-ho as well, astonishing everyone. Son-hee quickly helped her friend mingle with others. That night, Son-hee invited Soo-yeon over for dinner. Soo-yeon felt a little shy as it was her first time visiting someone else's home, and she clumsily dropped some food. Son-hee's parents were delighted that their daughter brought a friend home, and Soo-yeon felt the warmth of their family. After dinner, Son-hee offered to walk Soo-yeon back, but Soo-yeon politely declined. Son-hee's father, observing her, sensed she was troubled and thus suggested a family trip, expressing the wish to take her friend along as well. The next morning, while taking out the trash, that Soo-yeon unexpectedly overheard Kyung-ho talking about how he only liked Son-hee. This made Soo-yeon feel jealous. In a fit of anger, she confronted Son-hee, asking if Kyung-ho was going to meet her today. Son-hee, taken aback, confirmed that there was indeed something planned. Without warning, Soo-yeon shouted for Son-hee not to show up in front of Kyung-ho today, or else their relationship would end. Son-hee was stunned by Soo-yeon's hostility towards her. When class ended, Kyung-ho arrived to meet Son-hee, but because Soo-yeon was present, Son-hee declined his invitation. again. Disheartened, Son-hee returned home, but unexpectedly spotted a book Soo-yeon had forgotten. Thus, she ran to find Soo-yeon. Just as she was about to express her joy at seeing her friend, wondered why Soo-yeon was standing in front of Kyung-ho's house. Seeing Soo-yeon enter her best friend's home made Son-hee hesitate to disturb them. Inside, Soo-yeon found Kyung-ho had decorated the room to prepare for his confession to Son-hee. Looking at the balloons and roses scattered throughout the house, Soo-yeon felt uncomfortable and told Kyung-ho to stop, asserting that he would only be rejected anyway. Kyung-ho took a step closer to Soo-yeon, questioning whether she liked Son-hee too. Meanwhile, outside, Son-hee waited for a long time without seeing anyone. Just when she was about to turn away, a scream pierced the air. Inside, Soo-yeon had lost her mind, brandishing a knife at Kyung-ho. Seeing Son-hee arrive, she lunged at her, but Kyung-ho stepped in front of the blade, blood quickly soaking the floor. Son-hee collapsed in despair, fearfully returning home. Trembling, she told her mother that she had lost Kyung-ho. Her mother was speechless upon hearing her daughter's words. Son-hee declared her intention to confess, but the only concern her mother had was whether Son-hee had killed Kyung-ho. Son-hee admitted to stabbing him, but was so frightened that she left the murder weapon at Kyung-ho's house. Her mother solemnly inquired if there were any witnesses, but Son-hee concealed the truth, shaking her head and claiming ignorance. Besides, she had dropped her phone and math book at the scene. Her mother reassured her, saying everything would be all right, and then hugged her tightly. Her mother quickly drew the curtains and changed Son-hee out of her blood-soaked clothes. She then coldly walked out to prepare dinner, adding some sleeping pills to a glass of milk for Son-hee, who lay fearfully on her bed. A new day began, and Seon-hee awoke on her warm bed, surprised to find her notebook and phone on the table. She couldn't believe her eyes, but upon checking the phone, she found a picture of the three of them together. Cautiously, she stepped into the living room, bewildered to see her parents going about their daily routine. Suddenly, a news report broke about a house fire, and Son-hee was horrified to learn that the burning house belonged to Kyung-ho, with his entire family tragically perishing. Seon-hee quivered as she looked at her gentle mother sitting before her, wondering if her mother had caused the fire. At the same time, at Kyung-ho's house, police were summoned to investigate. The house had been completely destroyed, with the blaze originating from the son's room. Soo-yeon also arrived to observe, her fearful expression catching the attention of the police. As soon as the inspector approached her, Soo-yeon hurriedly fled. The inspector instructed his team to investigate the victim's friend group. Angrily, Soo-yeon called Son-hee, but there was no answer. Furious, she rushed to Son-hee's house, while Son-hee isolated herself in her room, ignoring her mother's calls to let her in, refusing to meet anyone at all. The father noticed that Soo-yeon had arrived at his house and subtly tried to send her away. However, Soo-yeon was adamant about wanting to see Son-hee. Seeing the determined expression on the girl's face, Son-hee's parents agreed to let her in. Upon entering Son-hee's room, she immediately burst out, questioning Son-hee about what she had done. "Did you really set Kyung-ho's house on fire?" Seon-hee, terrified, did not dare admit anything. The image of Kyung-ho desperately trying to hold her hand haunted her mind. Soo-yeon went wild, grabbing Son-hee, asking if she had caused Kyung-ho's death. "Why would you do that?" Soo-yeon felt disgust towards the person before her, demanding that Son-hee confess. "Are you trying to blame me instead?" Son-hee cried, insisting that she meant no such thing. Immediately, Soo-yeon took off her wig, stepping forward to recount the years of misery she endured, explaining how she should have lived a wealthy life like Son-hee. Son-hee replied that she couldn't turn herself in, prompting Soo-yeon to yell that Son-hee was the real murderer. She insisted on taking Son-hee to the police station. Just as Soo-yeon opened the door, Son-hee's father stood waiting outside. Panicking at discovering that he had overheard everything, Soo-yeon fled from the house, leaving Son-hee alone in her room, sobbing over the sins she had committed. Meanwhile, in the classroom, rumors circulated that Kyung-ho's family dealt with drugs, which supposedly ignited the blaze. When Sung-woo heard about the unfounded gossip regarding his best friend, he became furious and confronted one of the culprits. He still could not accept that Kyung-ho had passed away. At the same time, Soo-yeon stood outside the police station, staring at the gift that Kyung-ho had given to Son-hee. She recalled that fateful day when she went to Kyung-ho's house to inquire about the present. Kyung-ho was surprised that Son-hee had given it to Soo-yeon. Taking advantage of the situation, she stated that Son-hee did not like him. Kyung-ho, angered, defended Son-hee, warning Soo-yeon to return the gift. Observing her unwillingness to comply, Kyung-ho advanced, attempting to snatch the gift from her. He insisted she return it. Tears streamed down Soo-yeon's cheeks as she lashed out, destroying everything Kyung-ho had set up. In the scuffle, Soo-yeon's wig slipped off, and Kyung-ho gazed in shock at the scar on her head. Soo-yeon screamed in despair, crawling toward her fallen wig, begging Kyung-ho not to look at her. In her desperation, Soo-yeon approached a knife on the table, intending to end her life. Fortunately, Kyung-ho rushed over to stop her, and at that moment, Son-hee appeared, unleashing a tempest of chaos. To this day, Soo-yeon continues to shift all the blame onto Son-hee. On her way home, she was followed by a black car, which suddenly accelerated to block her path. The window rolled down, and a voice ordered Soo-yeon to get in. Meanwhile, Son-hee's mother was desperately trying to reach her daughter, who slowly opened the door. Son-hee informed her mother that if the police came to their house, but before she could finish, her mother turned away, leaving. Seon-hee questioned her mother about whether she intended to reveal the truth. Why were the phone and book on the table? What really happened at Kyung-ho's house yesterday? Her mother avoided Seon-hee's inquiries, saying they should wait for her father to return before discussing it further. That night, detectives at the police station stayed awake, investigating, but they had yet to uncover any leads regarding the case. They only possessed a photograph of the victim with his close friend. The detective noted that Soo-yeon had been present at the crime scene, leading him to suspect that she was connected to the incident. Seon-hee's past resurfaced. During her first encounter with her adoptive parents, she had been very shy, unable to meet their gaze. Only after the two had left did Seon-hee reprimand herself for not being adequate. It was then that Soo-yeon approached her friend, offering words of comfort. Suddenly, Soo-yeon awoke, realizing she was sitting in the black car. A stranger wielding a hammer knocked her unconscious. As the intruder busied himself with tools, Soo-yeon, bleeding from her head, managed to escape. At home, Seon-hee tried to call Soo-yeon, but no one answered, increasing her concern that something terrible had happened to her friend. Suddenly, the memories of Kyung-ho flooded back. They had shared joyful moments together. Seon-hee mustered the courage to search for the article about the Kyung-ho family case and cried uncontrollably, realizing she had sent them all to meet the Grim Reaper. Just then, Song-woo showed up outside her house, wanting to invite Seon-hee to the funeral with him. Her mother was worried about his appearance, but to avoid arousing suspicion, Seon-hee stepped out and agreed to go with Song-woo. The two of them arrived in front of Kyung-ho's altar. Seon-hee struggled to hold back her emotions and quickly left in anguish. As she reached the gate, Seon-hee suddenly collapsed, and Song-woo worriedly helped her outside to rest. At that moment, Seon-hee's father drove up, anxiously asking if his daughter was okay. After confirming that she was fine, he thanked Song-woo and quickly drove away. Inside the car, Seon-hee remained silent, while her father reassured her that everything would be all right, emphasizing that the most important thing was having family by her side. Seon-hee felt a sense of relief upon hearing her father's words. At the same time, two inspectors appeared at Seon-hee's house to take statements. They were taken aback by the luxurious villa. Just then, Seon-hee's car returned, and her father stepped out to speak with them. The inspectors wanted to talk to Seon-hee briefly. Overcome with fear, she bowed her head to the seat, but unexpectedly spotted the gift she had given to Soo-yeon. Why was it in her father's car? She trembled, looking at the man in front of her, wondering if her father had harmed Soo-yeon. Her father then invited the two inspectors inside, as they wished to ask a few questions to confirm the relationship between Seon-hee and the victim. The atmosphere grew tense as Seon-hee tried to remain calm in the face of the inspectors' questions, but her unnatural demeanor did not go unnoticed. Her mother held her trembling hands, and after gathering some information, the inspectors decided to leave. Her mother questioned why Seon-hee had said that Soo-yeon had never been there. Before Seon-hee could respond, her father praised her, making her uncomfortable standing in front of him. She excused herself, claiming to be tired, and went to her room to rest. Devastated, she sat down in front of her door, attempting to contact Soo-yeon, but no one answered. Suddenly, she received a call. It was Song-woo, worried and calling for her. Seon-hee asked if he had seen Soo-yeon, but Song-woo was unaware. After obtaining Soo-yeon's address, she slowly made her way to Soo-yeon's house. However, her roommate did not know where Soo-yeon had gone, stating that Soo-yeon had not returned for several days. That night at the police station, the forensic results arrived. Kyung-ho apparently did not die from smoke inhalation, but had taken his own life. The inspector hurriedly grabbed the test results. This was the evidence concluding that the fire was not an accident. The inspector questioned his superiors as to why they wanted to halt the investigation. Meanwhile, Seon-hee sadly returned home, hesitating to enter as she worried for Soo-yeon's safety. She recalled the last time she had seen Soo-yeon and the appearance of the gift in her father's car. Just then, a stranger appeared, asking Seon-hee if she remembered him. However, Seon-hee did not recall this man. He introduced himself as her father's cousin, mentioning that it had been a long time since he last saw her. She found it strange to notice the look in her uncle's eyes as he pointed toward the room in front of her, although she did not know whose room it was. Before leaving, her uncle warned Seon-hee to be cautious of her parents. Seon-hee looked after the man in confusion, and her father witnessed the entire unexpected encounter. Seon-hee calmly walked into the house, where her mother coldly inquired if she had just met their uncle. Seon-hee recalled her uncle's words and tried to evade her mother's question. Throughout that entire night, Seon-hee couldn't sleep, as her uncle's reminder echoed in her mind. Curious about the secret room her uncle mentioned, she waited for her parents to fall asleep before quietly heading down the hallway. She carefully made no noise as she approached the opposing staircase. At the end of the corridor was a door that was always locked. Mustering all her courage, Seon-hee stepped up to the door and attentively listened for any sounds inside. Suddenly, a noise startled her, causing Seon-hee to run downstairs. Just as she was about to head back to her room, both her father and mother stood at the staircase, questioning her about what she was doing. Seon-hee calmly concocted an excuse about needing a drink of water. A new day began, but throughout the morning, she struggled to concentrate. Noticing his friend's distress, Song-woo approached her to check on her. Unexpectedly, Seon-hee pleaded with him for help. She wanted to skip school that day, Song-woo was taken aback by her request, but he agreed to assist her. The two then went to the teacher's room to request permission to leave school. The teacher cautiously probed their intentions, but given the recent loss of their closest friend, the prosecutor was incensed and struck. At the same time, Son-hee's parents were out, and after securing the early leave form, Son-hee quickly grabbed a bus home. Sung-woo, confused, followed her. Son-hee was determined to uncover the secret of the room her uncle mentioned. At that moment, her mother called, and when Son-hee told her that she was already home, her mother, worried, asked if her daughter was feeling unwell. She mentioned that she would return home in about 30 minutes. In a hurry, Son-hee searched for the key to unlock the secret room. She rummaged through her father's desk drawer, but found nothing, and even in her parents' private room, there were no clues. She then dashed to the storage room to continue her search. Unexpectedly, she discovered a bunch of keys hidden in a box. She quickly ran to the secret room, but as she turned around, her father appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Son-hee recalled her father's warning from her childhood, prohibiting her from entering that room, marking the first time she saw her father visibly angry. However, her curiosity compelled her not to stop. She tried each key one by one, but none could open the door. Outside, Song-woo stood guard for Son-hee, unaware of the reckless plan she was concocting. Just then, Son-hee dashed out and asked Song-woo to help her climb up. She carefully ascended to inspect the room, but the door remained tightly shut. At that moment, her parents' car pulled into the driveway. Song-woo urgently told her to come down, but Son-hee insisted on continuing her search for the truth. She instructed Song-woo to distract her father. Surprised by Song-woo's presence, her father was about to enter when Song-woo asked him to watch his dance moves, leaving her father bewildered by the antics of his daughter's friend. Moments later, Son-hee's mother returned home and was excited to see Song-woo's performance, allowing Song-woo to buy Son-hee time. He pretended to suffer from a cramp, and only after confirming Son-hee had entered the room did he breathe a sigh of relief. Seon-hee was astonished to find that the secret room belonged to a boy. She slowly approached the desk, which held several photographs. Seon-hee's parents had come inside, and her mother anxiously searched the house for her daughter, noticing her husband standing frozen when he realized where their daughter must be. He ascended the stairs, silently moving along the hallway toward the locked room, retrieving a key to unlock the door. Just as the door swung open, Seon-hee's voice echoed from downstairs. She emerged in a bathrobe as her parents exchanged suspicious glances. Her mother entered the bathroom to check, confirming that there was steam inside, but when she turned to leave, she noticed her daughter's clothes were nowhere to be found. Having stealthily entered the secret room, Son-hee had stolen a photograph. Her mother maintained an air of ignorance, smiling as she prepared milk for Son-hee. Son-hee, with a hint of suspicion, drank the milk, appearing to have something on her mind. When she mentioned her father's cousin, her mother halted her actions. Son-hee wondered if the reason her parents had distanced themselves from family was because of her. Her mother quickly reassured her that was not the case and comforted Son-hee, urging her not to think that way. Heartbroken, Son-hee asked why her mother had chosen to adopt her. Taken aback by the mention of her deceased son, her mother realized Son-hee had unearthed the truth. Dejected, Son-hee returned to the secret room. Later that night, her mother discussed the situation with her husband, expressing concern that Son-hee seemed to know something. Yet, her husband insisted they must keep this secret at all costs, while also emphasizing that their plans need to be expedited. Unbeknownst to them, Son-hee had overheard everything. A new day began, and Son-hee was sadly meeting Song-woo. Song-woo tried to engage her in conversation, but Son-hee made every effort to avoid him. Frustrated, Song-woo inquired about what had happened the day before, but Son-hee resolutely refused to share. The two later arrived at an abandoned house, and Song-woo anxiously questioned whether it was dangerous. Suddenly, a mysterious man appeared behind them. Son-hee lowered her head and introduced herself, and the man immediately led the two children inside the house, which exuded a gloomy atmosphere, making Song-woo feel uneasy. He curiously asked what this place was, and Son-hee replied that it was her grandmother's house. Just then, the door to the living room swung open, revealing an elderly woman in a wheelchair. Seon-hee politely greeted her grandmother, but the elderly woman seemed displeased to see her grandchild there, insisting that they should quickly leave. Seon-hee was aware that her grandmother disliked her, but she had come with questions in mind. Seon-hee pulled out a family photo, prompting her grandmother to ask emotionally how she had that picture. Seon-hee asked who the boy in the photo was, causing her grandmother to shout angrily at her for daring to inquire. She was not family to her, yet Son-hee was determined to uncover why her parents had concealed the truth about her. Filled with rage, her grandmother knocked over a vase and ordered the two children to leave. Song-woo hurriedly supported Son-hee as they exited the house. After returning to the city, Song-woo gently tended to Son-hee's wounds, understanding that she was grappling with something hidden. Seon-hee rushed to explain that she didn't fully understand the situation, which was why she couldn't provide clarification. Perplexed, Son-hee wondered why her grandmother had been so angry. To lift Son-hee's spirits, her friend offered to carry her as they strolled around before heading home. That night, Son-hee reminisced about the first birthday celebration her adoptive parents had organized for her. She sadly recorded her experiences in a journal. Her parents read her entries, noting that the child who had made Son-hee disenchanted with school, had transferred immediately thereafter. However, an even more horrifying rumor reached Son-hee. Classmates claimed that the child had died. A new day dawned, and early in the morning, Sung-woo was waiting for Son-hee at the gate. As soon as she departed, her parents burst into her room to check on her. Her father accessed her web browsing history and then opened her journal, where she had disclosed everything to Sung-woo. Meanwhile, police officers were surveilling outside Son-hee's home, suspecting that her family was involved in a case under investigation. Just as they intended to follow Son-hee, a superior officer intervened. The two children made their way to a nearby park, where Son-hee began to recount the day Kyung-ho was stabbed while trying to save her. Sung-woo was left speechless upon discovering the truth and asked why she had not reported it to the police. Son-hee explained that she couldn't do that, but she could only share so much. The next day, Son-hee received a text message from an unknown number. She was surprised to discover that it was none other than Soo-yeon. Son-hee hurriedly rushed out of class to meet her, but by the time she arrived, Soo-yeon had already left. At the end of the road, Son-hee spotted a familiar silhouette and hurried to catch up with her friend. While engrossed in the chase, she failed to notice an oncoming vehicle. In a critical moment, Sung-woo appeared just in time to save her life. This prompted Son-hee to recall a strange dream from her childhood, where she had been pushed off a cliff by her adoptive father. To this day, she remained unaware of the reason behind that dream. The driver, after assessing the situation, fled the scene. Sung-woo was quickly taken to the hospital, and fortunately, he only sustained minor injuries. Son-hee felt guilty for consistently putting others in danger. Sung-woo reassured her that everything was okay, but he had no intention of concealing the truth about the fire incident. Sung-woo suggested that they report it to the police, to which Son-hee agreed. At that moment, Sung-woo realized something odd. The black car that had sped by showed no intention of stopping when it saw Son-hee, as if it meant to collide with her. Suddenly, Son-hee remembered her adoptive parents and the gift left in the car after the fire incident. Son-hee pleaded with Sung-woo not to rush to the police, as she needed to confirm something first. Just as Son-hee prepared to reveal the truth, her parents unexpectedly rushed to the hospital. Son-hee assured them she was fine, but she noticed her father exhibiting strange behavior, clenching his fists and glaring at Sung-woo, as though he had committed a serious offense. The near-miss accident had been reported to the authorities, and the inspector found it peculiar that recent cases were all linked to Son-hee. That evening, her lawyer father worked late when a colleague arrived to congratulate him. The colleague expressed admiration for the father's ability to resolve cases and commented on the sacrifices made to reach their current positions. The colleague sensed that the father bore some pressure. However, the father smiled and dismissed the notion, claiming everything was fine. A new day began, but Son-hee lacked the appetite for breakfast with her parents. At that moment, the police showed up at their doorstep. Her father invited them into his office, where the police revealed they had caught wind of a black car implicated in an accident that fled the scene. Her father commented that his daughter had not reported anything. Son-hee felt uncomfortable with her father's touch when the police suddenly inquired if he had rented a black car. Son-hee recalled the day of the incident, and the atmosphere grew tense. Her father defensively asked the police what they meant, to which they disclosed their investigation revealed he had rented the vehicle. Son-hee turned to look at her father in fear, while the inspector noted her reaction. Angrily, her father scheduled a meeting with the police for the following day at the law office. After escorting the officers out, he sat in contemplation when suddenly he received a phone call. He cradled his head in his hands upon hearing from his wife about Son-hee. Meanwhile, in her room, Son-hee's faith began to waver significantly. Was it possible her parents truly wished to endanger her? Numerous coincidences had unfolded recently, from the Kyung-ho family's house fire to her near hit from a speeding vehicle. Even the identity of the mysterious boy in the photo with her parents remained elusive. Unbeknownst to her, her father was privy to the truth. He coldly entered a secret room to investigate. The door he had locked was ajar, suggesting someone had opened it without his consent. Furious, he approached his daughter's door, and just as Son-hee opened it, he boomed, demanding to know why she had been there. Her mother, hearing the commotion, rushed over. In a fit of rage, the father searched Son-hee's room for the stolen photo. Son-hee fearfully admitted the picture was in her backpack. Upon acquiring it, her father coldly brushed past her. Summoning all her courage, Son-hee asked who the person in the photo was and why all recent events revolved around her parents. Trembling, she dropped to her knees. Her father calmly turned to her, admitting that he too was fearful and that everything had spiraled out of control because of her. Just as he was about to reveal the entire truth, her mother intervened, warning him not to let Son-hee into that room ever again. After an argument with her parents, Son-hee reached out to her uncle, who arranged to meet her at a small roadside restaurant. Upon seeing his niece enter, the uncle flashed a sinister smile. The two sat down to share a meal, and he noticed Son-hee's troubled expression, prompting him to make jokes to alleviate her tension. Son-hee asked her uncle if there had been another person living with her parents, to which he apologized before revealing his police badge. In reality, he was a police officer who had been posing as a relative due to her parents' desperate request for help. He had known Son-hee's father for many years and advised her to come to terms with the fact that her father had a different side to him. That evening, according to the schedule, police arrived at the law office to investigate. They requested security personnel to review surveillance footage, and unexpectedly, they spotted a black car moving through the parking lot, likely the vehicle that had intentionally caused an accident and then fled the scene. However, the police had yet to identify who was driving that car. At the same time, some fishermen were shocked to discover a body part floating in the water. The police quickly cordoned off the area, and upon investigation, they found Soo-yeon's student ID. Son-hee, unaware of the dire news, returned home sadly. Her mother was waiting at the door and asked where she had been. Son-hee lied, stating she had been with Song-woo. Her mother coldly instructed her to join them in the living room, where her father came down from upstairs with study abroad documents. Due to recent events, they wanted Son-hee to go abroad immediately, promising to arrange for themselves to join her later. Son-hee was confused, unable to grasp what was happening. Her mother sat beside her, attempting to comfort her, and unexpectedly recounted a story about a boy in a photograph who was their son but had died in a fire. She vividly remembered that fateful day when the fire raged, consuming everything inside. For her parents, it was a painful memory, which is why they chose not to tell her. Son-hee was torn, unsure who to trust. She needed clarification on one issue: what her mother had been doing at Kyung-ho's house that night. Her mother recounted that when she arrived, Kyung-ho was still alive and had looked directly at her, begging for help. In her panic, she could not remain calm. Just as she was about to call for help, Kyung-ho urged her not to, insisting that she leave before someone returned. The mother quickly grabbed her daughter's notebook and phone and fled, uncertain about the reason behind Kyung-ho's house fire. That entire night, Son-hee was unable to sleep, reflecting on her uncle's words. He had known her father for a long time, but believed he was hiding a different identity. He revealed that her father had previously been a prosecutor before abruptly switching to being a lawyer. The secret room was really the former bedroom of their deceased son, who had died in a shocking arson case 13 years prior. Strangely, news related to that incident had been swiftly erased. Her uncle suspected that Son-hee's father was the prime suspect, expressing curiosity about how he had escaped the flames. Subsequently, an unrelated individual was wrongly arrested. The uncle intended to gather evidence and bring Son-hee's father to justice, but he could not wait idly while Son-hee's life was in danger. Son-hee was on the verge of a breakdown as she processed her uncle's revelations, realizing her uncle was also a victim of her parents, who had taken the life of his son. At that moment, a news report announced that Soo-yeon's body had been found, leading police to conclude that someone had kidnapped her. Son-hee's father silently observed the news. While at the police station, the detective struggled to identify the true mastermind behind the incidents. Suddenly, he was startled by a voice as Soo-yeon appeared before him, asking if he had forgotten her. However, it was merely a dream. Upon awakening, the detective anxiously glanced at the coffee cup on his desk. Meanwhile, Son-hee, unable to sleep, began researching the case from 13 years ago, only to find that all information had been mysteriously deleted. A new day dawned, and early in the morning, her uncle called Son-hee, surprising her with his knowledge of her phone number. Concerned for Son-hee's safety, he expressed his worries before abruptly hanging up before she could inquire further. For several days, Song-woo had been unable to reach Son-hee and was increasingly anxious, fearing that something bad had happened to her. Memories of joyful days spent with their close-knit group flooded his mind, diminished since Kyung-ho's passing. At the same time, at a closed cafe, the housekeeper of Son-hee's grandmother arranged to meet her father. The housekeeper mentioned that Son-hee had come by and out of curiosity asked what had happened. The father, tense, insisted that this was a family matter. The housekeeper advised him to visit Son-hee's mother more often. However, the father replied that she had never forgiven them. Just as the housekeeper was about to leave, he warned the father to be cautious of car accidents. He added that if it occurred more than 3 times, someone would have to die. Since returning home, Son-hee had been unable to sleep, obsessively searching for information about the case from years ago. At that moment, her mother knocked and entered the room. Son-hee quickly jumped into bed, claiming she had been hearing noises outside. Taking advantage of her mother checking the window, Son-hee turned off her computer screen, unaware that her mother noticed this action. Her mother smiled and asked if she wanted anything to eat. Son-hee obediently agreed, but just as her mother headed downstairs, the doorbell unexpectedly rang. Outside, Sung-woo was waiting, hoping to see Son-hee. He pleaded with her mother to let him speak with Seon-hee for a moment, but she firmly refused, telling him to go home. As he turned to leave, Seon-hee sent a text urging him to wait at home. While Seon-hee continued investigating the old case, she suddenly overheard a conversation between her parents. Once they had retreated to their room, Seon-hee quietly descended to the kitchen. She was stunned to see that her mother's newly bought groceries included peanut flour, despite her lifelong allergy to peanuts. The thought of her mother wanting to harm her terrified Seon-hee. She hurriedly remained in her room, not daring to make a sound, as she heard her mother's frantic voice, insisting that time was running out and they needed to do it quickly. In panic, Seon-hee ran into a wall, creating a noise, but when her mother opened the door, there was no one there. Frantically, Seon-hee hid inside her room, struggling to hold back her breath. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, Song-woo had gone to the police station. Recent occurrences had him worried for Son-hee's safety, prompting him to share everything with the authorities. As Son-hee read his messages, she felt a glimmer of hope, unaware that her mother lurked outside her door, having prepared Son-hee's final meal. As her mother walked into the room with a bowl of porridge, Son-hee broke into a cold sweat. Her mother leaned in close and gently urged Son-hee to eat and then rest. Hesitant, Son-hee dared not touch the spoon of porridge her mother offered, with the police's warnings echoing in her mind. In tears, she looked at the woman before her, quickly flinging the spoon away and running, desperate to escape her strange family. Memories of Kyung-ho flooded back, reminding her how their fate had changed because of her. Crumpling to the ground, she felt that she could trust no one. Suddenly, an inconvenient downpour drenched her as she trudged slowly through the rain, seeking refuge in a corner to call Song-woo. He was surprised when Son-hee revealed that she had run away from home. Weeping uncontrollably, she struggled to speak, prompting Song-woo to ask where she was, promising to get to her as fast as possible. Unexpectedly, from a dark alley, Son-hee spotted the silhouette of a stranger, sending her into a wild sprint to blend in with the crowd. However, when she glanced back, a hand shoved her into the street. A car barreled toward her, unable to brake in time, striking her down. As Song-woo arrived at a nearby pharmacy, he noticed an ambulance pulling away. His eyes caught sight of a suspicious figure in black swiftly passing by. As he chased after him, Son-hee's father appeared, shielding him with an umbrella just as he received a call from his wife. She informed him that Son-hee had just been taken to the hospital. Both rushed to the hospital for clarification. Upon arrival, the police informed the father that they needed to speak with him. He asked Song-woo to care for his wife before accompanying a nurse. The police revealed they had secured footage from the car's dash cam and determined that Son-hee had been pushed into the street by someone. In her stupor, Son-hee sensed someone entering the room. The footsteps grew closer, instilling fear within her. Her mother coldly inquired why she was still alive, her rage culminating in a sudden grip around Son-hee's throat without hesitation. As Son-hee's scream pierced through the room, it triggered an alert from those outside. It turned out she was merely experiencing a nightmare. However, upon catching sight of her mother, Son-hee lost control, and a wave of fear engulfed her mind, leading to an immediate seizure. The doctors swiftly arrived to assess the situation, administering a sedative that gradually calmed Son-hee before she slipped into unconsciousness. Police stood vigil outside the hospital room, and unexpectedly, Son-hee awakened, desperately trying to call for her friend. Fearing her parents were attempting to restrain her, the police rushed in, questioning what she had just said, but Son-hee fainted once more, leaving her parents frozen in shock as they observed their daughter. The inspector, after losing the opportunity for a testimony, fell into contemplation. Colleagues reported that they had traced Son-hee's movements. She had run near Soo-yeon's house just before the accident occurred. A new day dawned, and early in the morning, the inspector summoned a recently released gang associate for assistance. As the black car approached the parking lot, the associate crashed violently into it, leaving the father disheartened at the sight of his damaged vehicle. The car was promptly taken to the repair shop, providing the inspector the chance to investigate any evidence from the vehicle. The forensic team quickly discovered traces of blood within the father's car. Simultaneously, in the hospital, Son-hee dreamt of a childhood friend, a friend to whom she had given a matchbox. Terrified, she watched a fierce blaze engulfing everything. Startled awake, Son-hee felt the warmth from her mother's hand. Her mother had been vigilantly caring for her throughout the night. Son-hee apologized for the strange words she had said the previous day, indicating she had been trapped in a nightmare. She struggled to sit up and inquired about her phone. Her mother handed it over, then exited to call the doctor. As soon as her mother left the room, Seon-hee hurriedly dialed her police uncle, seeking his help. Unbeknownst to her, it was her uncle who had apprehended Soo-yeon. He coldly reviewed the final footage capturing Soo-yeon's escape. While outside, Sung-woo waited, recalling the image of the figure in black who had shoved Son-hee into the street. Abruptly, Sung-woo called someone who had died. Soo-yeon was the one who had pushed Son-hee down and then fled. Son-hee, no longer wanting to remain in the hospital, insisted on returning home despite her weakened state. Her father coldly questioned her motives for suggesting her parents wished to restrain her, implying she might be hiding something. Son-hee remained silent in response to the inquiry. Upon their return home, an unexpected surge of police descended upon the house, arriving to arrest the father for questioning. Son-hee panicked at the sight of her father being escorted away, and she gradually crumbled to the floor. Meanwhile, at the police station, the inspector unexpectedly received a mysterious gift. He did not know who had sent it. Upon opening the box to inspect its contents, he discovered an expensive lighter. Just then, his superior arrived, pleased that the inspector had apprehended the suspect. The forensic results were already in. It was only necessary to obtain the father's testimony, and the police would successfully incarcerate the real perpetrator. The inspector, disregarding the gift, made his way to the interrogation room. He took a deep breath before stepping inside, where the lawyer father sat calmly waiting. The two faced each other directly. At the same time, Seon-hee was in a state of despair, sitting in a room. She recalled the distress call she had made to her uncle, the police officer. However, witnessing her father being taken away, she could not bring herself to believe that her adoptive vindictive father was the culprit. Outside, her mother was persistently knocking on the door, but no one responded. Aware that her daughter was extremely worried, the mother reassured Son-hee, stating that she would go to the police station and urged her to stay home and rest. A torrential downpour made everything around them damp and oppressive. Song-woo cautiously approached the alley where Son-hee had taken refuge, having arranged to meet Soo-yeon there to talk. He stated that if Soo-yeon did not appear, he would report her to the police himself. Just as Song-woo turned to glance toward the street, a stranger appeared, catching him by surprise. The stranger insisted that Song-woo follow him. Song-woo questioned the young inspector about why he was trailing him. The inspector explained that he had seen messages sent to Soo-yeon's number. Song-woo candidly recounted the day Son-hee had the accident, mentioning that he had seen Soo-yeon fleeing the scene. The inspector was astonished at this revelation. However, Song-woo could not reveal the entire truth. The inspector did not press him further, asserting that the person he had seen was not Soo-yeon. They had found traces of blood and identified the suspect who had harmed Soo-yeon, and they would soon locate her. Song-woo was overwhelmed with confusion, uncertain of what was true. Who was the person he had seen? On his way back, he approached that very alley, and just as Song-woo let his guard down, a figure in black lunged at him, stabbing him. The surrounding crowd began to scream, the loud commotion capturing the inspector's attention. Who was responsible for this chaos? Simultaneously at the police station, the father stubbornly refused to confess, despite the victim's blood being found in his vehicle. The superior was exasperated, unable to resolve the case. The inspector continued his interrogation. The pressing question was, where was Soo-yeon? Unexpectedly, the father claimed that his car had been stolen. The inspector chuckled mockingly at the notion of a missing vehicle, coldly inquiring about the date of the theft. The father calmly replied that he did not know, but it seemed to have been taken on the day of the fire at Kyung-ho's house. Curious, the inspector pressed further, asking why he had not reported it. The father explained that on that date, a police officer had called him to inform him that the car had been found in a suburban area far from the center. When he retrieved the car, he checked the memory card, only to find that the thief had taken it. The inspector remained skeptical of the father's claims, suggesting that he had lent the car to someone. The lawyer smirked at the inspector's hurried conclusions, questioning if there was any evidence implicating him as the true culprit. The inspector realized he was cornered, prompting him to swiftly conclude the interrogation. Meanwhile, at her home, Son-hee was jolted awake by a loud noise. Someone had thrown a stone, shattering her window. Terrified, she stepped outside to investigate and found one pane of glass heavily damaged. Suddenly, another loud sound erupted from inside Son-hee's room, causing her to panic and flee. As she ran, she accidentally stepped on a shard of glass, causing her to fall to the ground in pain. When she turned around, a stranger wielding a knife appeared inside her home. Overwhelmed with fear, Son-hee fought to suppress the pain and escaped. The news of Soo-yeon stabbing Song-woo reached the inspector, who was perplexed as to why Soo-yeon was still alive. The inspector's subordinates warned the inspector of the upcoming danger. At that moment, Son-hee's mother also went to the police station to provide alibi evidence to her husband. They all overlooked the fact that Son-hee was in danger. Now, Soo-yeon stood before Son-hee, claiming that she had just dealt with Song-woo, and that the last person who needed to disappear was Son-hee. Soo-yeon moved towards a shovel at the scene in a rage and knocked Son-hee unconscious. Upon regaining consciousness, Son-hee found herself bound tightly in a bedroom, with the overwhelming smell of gasoline filling the air, instilling fear in her. Soo-yeon watched with glee as Son-hee struggled in pain, coldly placing a box of matches before her. Soo-yeon wanted Son-hee to endure what she had suffered. In terror, Son-hee desperately pleaded for her life, to which Soo-yeon furiously asked why she would want to betray her. Son-hee did not understand what Soo-yeon was saying. Crying, she insisted that she had not done anything wrong and asked what had happened to Soo-yeon. Enraged, Soo-yeon accused Son-hee of being responsible for Kyung-ho's death. Unable to contain herself any longer, Son-hee retorted that when her mother went to Kyung-ho's house, he was still alive. This revelation astonished Soo-yeon. So, it was the mother who started the fire? Furious, Soo-yeon kicked over a chair. Weakly, Son-hee noticed a familiar figure outside the yard and desperately called for her police uncle to save her. Soo-yeon, in a fit of rage, pointed a knife at the stranger. The uncle entered the house slowly, indifferent to Son-hee's life-threatening situation. He laughed upon seeing Soo-yeon dousing the house in gasoline. Soo-yeon screamed a threat that if he took another step forward, she would kill Son-hee. The uncle, unconcerned, pulled out a lighter, and the sight of the flame in his hand terrified Soo-yeon. He laughed and flicked the lighter towards the front, igniting a fierce fire that rapidly consumed the room. Terrified, Soo-yeon untied Son-hee, not wanting her friend to die. Son-hee grabbed Soo-yeon's arm, and the two of them stumbled to escape the real monster. Exhausted from smoke inhalation, they struggled to reach outside. The uncle coldly stepped forward, crushing Soo-yeon's hand underfoot. He seized the weapon, threatening her to stand up. Son-hee, in fear, questioned whether he was truly a police officer. The uncle merely turned to apologize to Son-hee before advancing towards Soo-yeon, threatening her to enter the flames. Son-hee desperately grabbed for the weapon, but was knocked unconscious. Just as the uncle prepared to send Soo-yeon into the fire, the young inspector appeared, wielding a gun to threaten the real perpetrator. The uncle calmly claimed he was also a police officer, urging the inspector to check the badge in his pocket if he didn't believe him. The inspector shouted for him to stand still. Torn between the truth, the inspector hesitated on whom to trust. One side a police officer, the other a murderer who had just stabbed Song-woo. Ultimately, he decided to lower his gun. Just as he approached to check on Son-hee, the perpetrator snatched up a weapon and struck him down. The inspector collapsed, gritting his teeth in pain as he endeavored to restrain the perpetrator. The assailant mercilessly trampled him. Just when Soo-yeon attempted to flee, he confronted her with a firearm, taunting her that from that moment on, she was the one who had killed a police officer. A gunshot rang out, sending Soo-yeon to the grave. Simultaneously, after Son-hee's mother goes to the police station, her husband, the lawyer, was released due to an alibi. The higher-ups personally apologized to the lawyer. However, the father found it odd that the inspector was nowhere to be seen. The higher-ups informed him that the inspector was en route to the hospital as Song-woo had been critically injured. The father was stunned at the bad news, and both hurried to the hospital for updates. The inspector stated that Song-woo was in critical condition, but what concerned the father most was the fact that Soo-yeon was still alive. The mother anxiously called home to check, but Son-hee did not answer. At that point, the inspector realized the danger that Song-woo had warned about. The perpetrator was targeting Son-hee. The three of them hastily drove back home, with the inspector commanding his subordinates to respond quickly to Son-hee's location. However, upon their arrival, they discovered the house had been set ablaze, reduced to ashes. The firefighters were actively extinguishing the fire as the father stood in shock when he could not find his daughter. Even the young inspector was severely injured. The father summoned all his strength to leap into the inferno to search for his daughter, but was restrained by the firefighters. Meanwhile, Son-hee had been taken away by the perpetrator. For the first time, Soo-yeon's tragic past was revealed. Since childhood, she was kidnapped by a group of bad people. The children were either sold by their parents or orphans like Soo-yeon. The villains claimed that a boat would arrive the next day to take them to the black market. The children began to cry uncontrollably. Soo-yeon remained calm, carefully observing her surroundings. As night fell, the thugs woke the children and ordered them to get into a van. As it came to Soo-yeon's turn, one of the thugs announced that the police were coming. Taking advantage of their distraction, Soo-yeon quickly hid under the truck. The police stopped to check, but the thugs deliberately blocked their path. The police found nothing suspicious and left. Suddenly, one thug discovered a child hiding and bent down to check under the truck, but he didn't see Soo-yeon. She quickly ran away, but before she could get far, the thug spotted her and chased her relentlessly. Even when Soo-yeon found a corner to hide, she was discovered by one thug. Soo-yeon bit down hard on his hand, causing him to scream in pain. Seizing this opportunity, she fled into an abandoned building. However, she was cornered against a wall. Soo-yeon grabbed a metal rod and threw it at one of the men. With no escape route, she bravely climbed onto a railing. Enraged, the man lunged at her, but lost his footing and fell, pulling Soo-yeon down with him. Miraculously, she survived the fall, witnessing death for the first time before her eyes. Soo-yeon could have had the life she dreamed of, receiving Kyung-ho's love. However, upon discovering that Kyung-ho only loved Son-hee, she fell into despair. A cruel bullet ended a life filled with suffering. After escaping the police's grasp, the perpetrator called Son-hee's father, threatening him to pay a ransom. If he dared to report to the police, he would reveal the truth to Son-hee and send her to meet her demise in the most painful way. The next day, the perpetrator casually walked through the market, excitedly buying a new pair of shoes. At the same time, Son-hee had awakened, fearfully observing her surroundings. She noticed that the thug's henchman was still asleep, allowing her to sneak away. Her injured legs made it difficult for her to move, and just as she was about to descend the stairs, the perpetrator returned, tossing her the newly purchased shoes. Son-hee was bewildered, unsure of his true intentions. The perpetrator grew impatient when her father did not answer his calls, angrily reading the message from him, stating that he needed time to prepare the money. The perpetrator turned to Son-hee, suggesting that her father had abandoned her. If she wanted to escape, she would need to help him. He claimed that Soo-yeon was still alive, and if she refused to cooperate, it would be Soo-yeon who would meet her end. Son-hee hesitated, prompting the perpetrator to offer to reveal who had set fire to Kyung-ho's house. But first, he needed to disclose his identity. He was Son-hee's biological father. Son-hee was taken aback, but had considered this possibility before, sensing a familiar feeling since their first meeting. At this point, the perpetrator became enraged, stating that Son-hee's adoptive parents had betrayed him, placing all the blame on him. However, he had not anticipated that they would go to the orphanage to adopt Son-hee simply because she was his daughter. Son-hee could not accept this truth. Why had they done such a thing? The perpetrator explained that he had fallen into a trap set by those people, which led to his imprisonment for a time. After being released, he sought out his henchmen to find his daughter. Upon realizing that she was living with his enemies, he could hardly believe his eyes. The moment he saw Son-hee, he recognized her. The perpetrator felt envious of her adoptive parents. One day, he intended to rescue Son-hee, but unexpectedly saw her with Soo-yeon. That was also the day Kyung-ho's house was set ablaze. He quickly followed Son-hee, and when he heard a piercing piercing scream, he was at a loss for what to do. It wasn't until nightfall that he saw Soo-yeon running out, followed by Son-hee, covered in blood, walking dazedly in the dark. The perpetrator was curious about what had happened. He then followed Son-hee's adoptive mother to Kyung-ho's house. Just as he was about to enter, a black car appeared. He quickly hid in a corner to observe. He saw the adoptive mother leave without anyone noticing. Just as he was about to leave, she reappeared at midnight. The perpetrator approached the house to watch as a raging fire consumed everything. The day Son-hee first met her uncle was also the day he came to talk to her adoptive parents. He recounted what he had witnessed, but her adoptive parents threatened him to protect Son-hee from the truth. Consequently, her father instructed the uncle to track down Soo-yeon and eliminate the lead. Therefore, after Soo-yeon left the lawyer's office, he followed her and complied with the orders. Son-hee could not bear the harsh reality. Meanwhile, at the funeral home, the police team held a memorial service for the young inspector who had heroically sacrificed himself while on duty. The most heartbroken was his teammate, who wept like a child in front of his fallen comrade's memorial. He reminisced about a gift that had been on his desk, a poignant reminder that it was the last present given to him by a colleague. Just then, Son-hee's parents appeared before the inspector, seeking updates on the investigation's progress. The inspector mentioned that the police were actively pursuing Soo-yeon. Suddenly, her father claimed that Soo-yeon was not the culprit. The true perpetrator was someone else, who was currently holding Son-hee captive. The inspector was taken aback by this revelation, and her father disclosed the identity of the actual villain, who was also the one responsible for the death of their son and had subsequently been imprisoned. The inspector was left speechless when he realized he had been completely outsmarted by the perpetrator. The father kept stoking the flames, and if they did not meet the criminal's demands, he would take action against Son-hee. The wife recalled the first time the assailant visited their home, introducing himself as the husband's cousin. With a grotesque face and a maniacal grin, he threatened the couple. There was a moment when the father confronted the perpetrator, who inquired how much money he was willing to pay to retrieve his daughter. However, the father remained silent, prompting the assailant to angrily grab him by the collar, demanding to know why he had adopted his daughter. The father merely smiled in disdain, infuriating the criminal, who punched him, but the father remained unfazed. The villain demanded an exorbitant sum in exchange for keeping the secret hidden. On that fateful day at Kyung-ho's house, when the mother went to check on the victim's condition, the perpetrator followed her inside. Shaking with fear at the thought of someone discovering the crime scene, the assailant claimed that if she gave him more money, everything would be resolved neatly. Out of sheer panic, the mother complied with the villain's demands. She did not want her daughter to become a victim of circumstance. As she rushed toward the gate, she heard the parents returning. Just as she was about to call the police, she recalled the perpetrator's warning. It was only when the news broadcast reported a fire that she realized she had inadvertently aided a crime. After the news aired, Soo-yeon rushed to their house, and shortly after, the assailant appeared. He revealed that Son-hee was the one who had stabbed Kyung-ho, but fortunately for her, he had cleaned up the aftermath. The father, furious, wanted to report the incident to the police, but the assailant threatened that if the police got involved, Son-hee would definitely be arrested. Knowing the family's weak point, he suggested they comply with his wishes. The killer approached Son-hee's room and accidentally overheard a conversation between the two children. Son-hee was currently being pressured by an accomplice. The father was astonished to hear what was happening inside, and the assailant smiled as he concealed himself in a corner. The moment Soo-yeon stepped outside, he borrowed the father's car to deal with the accomplice, leaving the father bewildered about the assailant's intentions. A feeling of foreboding washed over him as the perpetrator followed Soo-yeon. In a fit of rage, the father grabbed the assailant by the collar, demanding to know why he had burned down Kyung-ho's house. The assailant retaliated violently, warning that if he wanted to ensure his daughter's safety, he should confess. The father felt ashamed for his inability to stop him, as the justice he had always pursued wavered. The continual threats from the criminal wore the mother down. Aware that the assailant was also allergic to peanuts, she prepared peanut flour for him. She had reached a point of no return. She wanted the perpetrator to disappear as quickly as possible. For the first time, the inspector heard the confessions from both individuals. After a moment of composure, he accepted the reality of the situation and inquired about Son-hee's whereabouts. At that moment, she was being held captive in an abandoned seaside house. The perpetrator grew impatient as the scheduled time for the father's arrival drew near, unaware that snipers had surrounded the house. Simultaneously, the inspector and Son-hee's parents were en route. The assailant, eager, called the father, and the inspector urged him to stretch out the conversation. The father claimed he was driving and asked the assailant to wait a bit longer. Infuriated by the father's delay, the assailant hung up the phone when he asked about his daughter's condition. After a lengthy journey, they finally arrived at the location. The police successfully apprehended the accomplice, but they were still unable to deal with the main perpetrator. The father insisted on entering the house, stating that it was the only way to save Son-hee. The inspector hesitated at this request, but as a father himself, he understood the depth of the father's determination. The father calmly entered, holding a bag of money. The perpetrator, sensing a change in the situation, took Son-hee hostage. Outside, the sniper team was carefully monitoring the criminal's every move. Excitedly, he asked if the father had enough money. The father raised the bag, pleading for the release of Son-hee, claiming all the money was his. The perpetrator, now on high alert, loaded his gun and coldly stated that he no longer wanted money. What he needed was to witness the wealthy, like the father, disappear. Just as the perpetrator was about to shoot the father, the sniper struck first, taking him down. The father urgently called Seon-hee to come to him, but halfway there, she suddenly froze, turning back toward the perpetrator. She slowly limped closer to him, her steps faltering. The perpetrator cried out in pain as Seon-hee sat beside him in despair. The father rushed over to check, but the perpetrator threatened him not to take another step. He then ordered Seon-hee to move with him to escape. However, his wounds were too severe and he could no longer resist. Seon-hee continued to apply pressure to his injury. Witnessing her suffering, the perpetrator abandoned his vengeful intentions, recalling the day he first saw Seon-hee born. The most beautiful moments of his life were intertwined with her. She was the light that illuminated his life full of crimes. At that moment, the father charged in, and the two engaged in a fierce struggle for the gun. A gunshot rang out, causing panic. The father, enraged, struck the perpetrator mercilessly, yet despite his injuries, the perpetrator fought back. Just as he managed to grip the gun, the father lunged forward, pulling him down into the cold sea. Son-hee screamed in anguish as she watched the two sink beneath the waves. The special forces team arrived soon after, quickly securing the scene. When she saw her mother running towards her, tears began to fall from Seon-hee's eyes. Her mother comforted her, assuring her that everything would be all right. The perpetrator's past began to unfold. He had sent Seon-hee to live with her grandmother due to financial difficulties. Each time he returned home, he berated his mother for money. Once he got what he wanted, he squandered it on gambling and lost everything. Despite attempting to borrow money over the phone, no one would help him. Thus, he targeted wealthy drunks to rob. Not long after, he was imprisoned. At that time, the father was working as a prosecutor. It was he who had filed charges against the robber for theft. In an act of revenge against the prosecutor, the perpetrator had been stalking him. The moment the father let his guard down, the perpetrator struck him down with a rock. The karmic connection between them has not yet concluded. Today, the perpetrator brought his daughter to the hospital for a checkup, coincidentally encountering the prosecutor who was undergoing treatment there. In a brazen manner, he inquired why the prosecutor was injured, to which the father replied that he had fallen after drinking too much. Unexpectedly, the perpetrator asked if the prosecutor could watch his daughter. Initially hesitant, the father eventually agreed to help him. The perpetrator then left the hospital and went to a convenience store, deliberately choosing a type of snack that contained peanuts. Upon returning, he found only the daughter playing with the prosecutor's son. He smiled and offered the peanut flour snack to the children. As soon as the son unwrapped it for Son-hee, she went into an allergic reaction. The son, terrified, called for a doctor. The scoundrel resorted to underhanded tactics to extract money from the prosecutor, even using his daughter as a tool in his schemes. The father, understanding that this was connected to his son, agreed to cover Seon-hee's medical expenses. Subsequently, the perpetrator shamelessly asked the father to help him purchase insurance. Not just the father, he also visited the workplace of the mother, who was completely unsuspecting of his intentions. She invited him and his daughter over for dinner. The perpetrator brought his daughter along with a bouquet of flowers to their home, feeling envious as he gazed at their spacious living quarters and the family photograph. During dinner, the perpetrator suddenly exhibited strange behavior. He was moved to tears from the kindness shown to him. He continuously recounted tales of his unfortunate life, primarily aiming to win over the father's sympathy. Wanting to assist him, the father agreed to take out an insurance policy for his whole family. The perpetrator increasingly exploited the shared name with the father to impersonate the prosecutor. However, this facade was quickly unveiled. He was subsequently captured by the gang leader, who demanded to know the whereabouts of the money, only to discover that the perpetrator had spent it all. The leader found out he was now selling insurance, and the perpetrator constantly begged for mercy. The health of the perpetrator's mother deteriorated, yet she remained sufficiently aware to grasp her son's intentions. Previously, he had presented her with a life insurance contract to sign, even setting up an insurance policy for Seon-hee. The mother feared he would harm her granddaughter. However, the perpetrator disregarded her concerns and threatened her not to call the police, warning that he would not let her be at peace. The perpetrator took Seon-hee to a harbor to play, and as she approached the shoreline, he contemplated committing an act against his own daughter. However, when the innocent child turned to look back, his conscience prevented him from proceeding. At that moment, the gang leader called, revealing that they had tracked the perpetrator to that location. The leader asked where the mother was and why only the daughter was present. He urged the perpetrator to go ahead, as they would serve as witnesses to deceive the insurance. Just then, the prosecutor's family arrived, surprised to find the perpetrator there. The gang members had investigated the background of the prosecutor and discovered that the two men appeared to be quite chummy on the outside. Nonetheless, the perpetrator sought to use the prosecutor as a witness, believing that the insurance would raise no suspicions about the incident with the prosecutor's presence. They were exceedingly hospitable and invited the perpetrator along. The boat set sail towards a remote island. Upon arrival, the perpetrator led Seon-hee to a secluded corner of the island. Despite Seon-hee's fear of the water, he made her stand near the cliffside. The perpetrator callously intended to push his daughter into the water, but that was merely a thought of his. At that moment, the prosecutor's son appeared, calling Seon-hee back. The perpetrator remained frozen in place, unable to act. Stunned, he sat on the rocky ledge reflecting on his actions. Noticing this, the prosecutor approached to speak with him, inquiring about his dreams. The perpetrator could not remember them any longer. The prosecutor remarked that his son was his dream, which led the perpetrator to gaze enviously at the prosecutor's son. The news of the perpetrator selling fake insurance reached the prosecutor, who felt disappointed at being exploited. Suddenly, he received a call inviting him to the perpetrator's new office. The prosecutor arrived with suspicion to find an old, rundown room. An electrician had warned the perpetrator to be cautious, as the wiring could easily catch fire alongside the chemicals present. However, the perpetrator disregarded the warning entirely. Just then, the prosecutor stepped in, and instead of the usual joviality, he confronted the perpetrator directly about whether he intended to steal the insurance money. The prosecutor demanded that he return the stolen funds, feeling disillusioned by the perpetrator's character. Despite the perpetrator's attempts to explain himself, the prosecutor could not find it in himself to forgive him and stormed out in anger. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, a group of thugs had captured the perpetrator to demand repayment. They beat him severely before dragging him to the balcony. The perpetrator pleaded for his life, but the thugs warned him they would give him 3 days. If he failed to return the stolen money, he would face dire consequences. The perpetrator then went to the hospital, where he saw his mother and daughter. When his mother woke up, she panicked upon realizing her granddaughter was missing. The perpetrator had taken Seon-hee to the prosecutor's son's school, tricking the boy into visiting his office. Once the bait was in position, he spiked a cup of water with sleeping pills. The perpetrator justified his outing by claiming he had few errands to run. He heartlessly left Seon-hee with the prosecutor's son. Meanwhile, the worried mother, unable to reach her son by phone, decided to call her husband. However, he dismissed her concerns, believing their son was simply out with friends, and since he was now older, he was likely to return late. Seon-hee's father has a difficult case today, especially with a challenging case currently on his desk. Just then, the suspect was brought in. He was a henchman from a gang. The henchman inquired if he would be released if he disclosed the name of the impersonating prosecutor. The prosecutor listened attentively, unaware that his son was in the company of the criminal, who casually ate candy in front of the children, while the two poor kids drifted into a deep sleep. He meticulously checked the son's phone before taking it for negotiations, as the perpetrator intended to extort money from the prosecutor. At that moment, the police burst in and apprehended him. He was arrested on charges of impersonation. He was furious to see the prosecutor approach, panicking as the police entered the office for an inspection. However, before leaving, he had hidden the two children in a separate room. The perpetrator did not anticipate a chemical barrel spilling, and the police failed to uncover anything suspicious. The father, deep in thought, ordered a retreat, while the perpetrator reveled in his undiscovered secrets, confidently allowing himself to be escorted to the police station. After addressing the case, the prosecutor personally interrogated him. The bold perpetrator suggested that his own son would live if the prosecutor helped him, leading the prosecutor to realize, with horror, that his son had been taken captive. The prosecutor was incensed and struck the perpetrator directly within the police station, compelling the officers to intervene. The authorities investigated the perpetrator. However, he refused to disclose where the children were held. Suddenly, the father recalled sighting a restroom door on the right upon his initial visit. Yet earlier that morning, the door had been blocked by a cabinet. He immediately ordered the police to head to the office for a rescue operation. Meanwhile, the wife arrived at the police station, anxious for her son. The couple quickly got into a car to reach the perpetrator's office. At that moment, the son had awakened, concerned that night had fallen without the perpetrator returning. Additionally, his phone had mysteriously vanished. In the pitch dark, he fumbled to find a light switch. As soon as he flipped the switch, the fuse erupted in a violent blaze. The son hurried to reassure Seon-hee, oblivious to the flames that were consuming everything outside. As he opened the door, fire engulfed the entire room. He desperately kicked the door to escape. The fire had been detected by firefighters, who swiftly dispatched a truck to extinguish it, but time was not on his side. He quickly comforted Seon-hee, promising they would be rescued. Scanning the room, he noticed a window above him and attempted to break it open. He managed to pull Seon-hee out through the narrow opening, but he found there was not enough room for himself to follow. Toxic smoke began seeping in, and he bravely ran to find another escape route. Unfortunately, a fallen shelf blocked his way. He sought out a nearby window, but it was securely locked. The flames continued to spread to the pile of chemicals, resulting in a massive explosion that sent him to his demise. By the time the police arrived, the room was engulfed in flames. The couple watched in agony as the fire incinerated everything within. The officers could only locate one survivor, which flickered a glimmer of hope in their hearts. However, the fortunate individual was Seon-hee. The two parents collapsed to the ground, while the mother screamed her son's name in despair. After losing his child, the father father fell into deep contemplation, constantly blaming himself for indirectly causing his son's death. Every day, he visited the hospital to care for his wife, who had yet to overcome the grief of losing their child. Increasingly, there were severe fraudulent cases, particularly those involving insurance fraud. Despite her hatred for that vile man, the mother still worried about Son-hee. Therefore, once she was discharged from the hospital, the first thing the couple did was visit the orphanage. Upon seeing Son-hee living a wretched life, the mother burst into tears, recalling how her son used to play with Son-hee as if she were their own flesh and blood. After a while, she returned to the orphanage to visit Son-hee, where she met Soo-yeon. The mother asked Soo-yeon to befriend Son-hee, and she decided to adopt Son-hee. Although her husband supported her decision, her mother-in-law did not share the same sentiment. To her, Son-hee was the child for whom her son had sacrificed his life, thus she wanted to nurture Son-hee properly. To this day, that feeling remains unchanged as she embraced her daughter tightly, both shedding tears. Meanwhile, the special unit managed to find Soo-yeon, who had been imprisoned, and at the same time, the father had escaped the clutches of death. The police quickly threw a lifebuoy to him, leaving only the perpetrator unaccounted for. Time passed swiftly, and Son-hee returned to a normal life, with Song-woo always by her side, caring for her. Their relationship gradually grew closer. Song-woo excitedly shared his ambitions with her, revealing his dream to become an architect. Son-hee admired his aspirations. Noticing a hint of sadness in her, Song-woo was unexpectedly thanked by Son-hee for always being there to support her. She then hurried home, where the house remained in disarray. Son-hee endeavored to tidy up, standing frozen before the burned family portrait. Once she had organized the space, Son-hee began to showcase her cooking skills, setting the table perfectly. When her parents returned, they were astonished to find that their daughter had prepared everything for her brother's birthday. Upon realizing the truth, Son-hee had always wished to celebrate her brother's birthday. She bowed her head, apologizing to her parents for her role in their son's death. The mother reassured her that it was not her fault. The family quickly sat down for the meal, and as Son-hee nervously scooped soup for her parents, tears welled up on their faces. Son-hee emotionally thanked her parents. At that moment, Sung-woo felt an ominous premonition. Son-hee's demeanor earlier seemed like a farewell for good. He hurriedly called an inspector to check on Son-hee at home. Just as Sung-woo had suspected, Son-hee had drugged her parents, causing them to sleep soundly. Suddenly, the perpetrator appeared, satisfied that his daughter was obedient. Everything started a few days ago when Son-hee received a mysterious phone call. She was taken aback to learn that the perpetrator was still alive. He wanted her help for one last task. Son-hee calmly approached the culprit, who stated that her relationship with them had come to an end. Surprising everyone, Son-hee asked him if he wanted to try the dish she had prepared. The perpetrator happily grabbed a bottle of wine, suggesting that in order to start a new life, they needed money first. Son-hee pointed to her father's office, where a secret safe was concealed, the password being her birthday. The perpetrator's eyes lit up as he entered the password. However, the safe indicated that the password was incorrect. Regardless of how many passwords he tried, the safe consistently rejected them. Son-hee coldly asked whether her father didn't remember her birthday. He gradually lost his composure, taking a swig from the wine bottle on the table. Disappointment overwhelmed Son-hee as the monster before her recounted the day she was born. He had been so overjoyed that he raced to the hospital in tears. After regaining his composure, he entered the password once more, and just as he suspected, the safe opened. Inside lay a vast amount of cash, and the perpetrator reveled in his newfound wealth, believing it would sustain him for a lifetime. Son-hee looked at her biological father with disgust when suddenly he dropped all of the money. In agony, the perpetrator clutched his throat, staggering and writhing in pain. Son-hee quietly observed as he crawled down the stairs. Unbeknownst to him, she had poisoned the wine, fully aware that he would drink it. She then coldly walked to the dining table, taking one last look at her adoptive parents, tears streaming down her cheeks. She knelt before the charred family photo, just as she was about to drink from the poisoned glass when her mother swiftly knocked it away. Son-hee was astonished to see her mother awake, who proclaimed that she was indeed her precious daughter, assuring Son-hee that no matter what she did, her parents would always protect her. Emotion welled up within Son-hee as she felt the warmth of familial love. At that moment, police officers arrived, discovering 4 unconscious individuals in the house, leaving the sergeant bewildered as to what had transpired. 3 long years have passed, and Seung-woo is now a college student abroad. Whenever he has free time, he sends letters to Son-hee. The home where Son-hee once lived has been remodeled beautifully, and her parents remain healthy and well. Seung-woo frequently visits them, but can sense a lingering loss in their hearts. He realizes that even though he hides his letters, Son-hee will never be able to respond. He reminisces about the joyful memories shared with his close friends. Today marks the day Soo-yeon is released from prison. After making mistakes in the past, Soo-yeon has served her time. She is shocked when Seung-woo comes to visit her, and he admits that he has forgiven her. The two often arrange to meet whenever they have the chance, reminiscing about their past together. Their bond began during childhood, and the warmth of Son-hee helped Soo-yeon feel loved. However, as time passed, Soo-yeon lost her way, and now it is too late for regrets. Seung-woo reassures assures her that whenever Son-hee returns, she should sincerely apologize to her. Although their daughter was no longer with them, the two were compelled to carry on with their lives. During a walk with her husband, the mother sensed someone was discreetly watching her. However, upon turning around, she could not identify anyone. The heavy snow had settled thickly outside, and the couple enjoyed a warm cup of tea together. The mother reminisced about the memories with her daughter and suddenly felt that Son-hee had just been there. The father hurried outside to check the gate, but there was not a single soul in sight. Parents' instincts are seldom incorrect, and the two ran down the street, soon encountering a familiar figure. Son-hee turned around, and tears of joy streamed down her small face. Her parents welcomed her home, and Seon-hee apologized for worrying them. She questioned whether her leaving had brought her parents more happiness, but despite the distance, she always thought of them. It was during that moment that she decided to return and see them. Her parents urged her to stay, insisting that this was her true home. Overcome with emotion, Son-hee wept, unsure of what to do next. The father felt guilty for having concealed everything. Each person in this narrative had made mistakes. However, one thing remained unchanged: the bonds of family love. The mother moved forward to embrace Seon-hee, and once again, their family was reunited. There was also something Son-hee desperately wanted to do. She had written a letter to her grandmother, hoping that she would attend the family photo shoot. When her grandmother read the letter, cherished by Son-hee, she felt immense guilt for having abandoned the family. She recognized Seon-hee's bravery. The butler advised the chairperson not to miss this opportunity, as it could serve as a way out for everyone. Today was the family photo shoot, and the parents had made all the necessary preparations, while Son-hee waited outside for her grandmother. Just then, the door opened, and she was overjoyed to see her grandmother appear. Son-hee gently assisted her grandmother inside, much to the surprise of her parents, who hadn't seen her in years. Finally, the grandmother apologized to her son. The father was moved, witnessing the change in his mother, as the bonds of family once again strengthened. Thus, we conclude the film. Thank you for reading our movie review. We hope that our insights have provided you with a deeper perspective on the film. Don't forget to like, share, and follow us for the latest reviews. Thank you, and see you next time.